Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jana Shortal. We are here today with the Citizens League to honor and recognize people in our community who have gone above and beyond to support their fellow neighbors and their fellow community members in the last year. I, of course, like most of you, believe deeply in community. We can't move forward unless we do it together, unless we work with one another and listen to one another, especially this year when it's so hard. This has been tough, but people around our state are working to make it better, and you're about to meet them. Folks in the audience, I do want to start with you. What have you seen this year? Beyond the bad, what have you seen? Have you witnessed people in your community, neighbors, helping neighbors? Have you seen that? Have you found that families around you are finding creative ways to have childcare solutions or education solutions? Have you seen first responders in your community going above and beyond? Have you seen the teachers in your community? I know, my goodness, I have. There's a lot of teachers where I live on my block, adapting to new learning environments. And every day when there's a challenge saying, okay, I'm going to try again, and tomorrow I'm going to try a different way. Have you seen on November 3rd and in the primary previous to that, people voting? And not only voting for themselves, but encouraging other people in their neighborhood, in their community to vote, and letting them know how, and letting them know the way to do it. Have you seen all of those things? I can go through that list, and I am certain I've seen all of those things in my community where I live and in my community where I work. And those are good things. That's civic leadership. That's the real work that makes a difference in us. I like to think it's not an accident that the abbreviation for the United States of America is USA. If you lose the A, it's us, the US. And we can't just be U.S. We have to be in us in order for this democratic experiment to succeed. Civic leadership is a part of that, and it's happening everywhere, every day. And in a few minutes, I'm going to give you, well, look at that. Look at that. 76% of you have noticed your neighbors checking things out. Teachers, 83%, and people voting, 88%. That's the winner. I agree. I've seen a tremendous amount of work around giving folks the right information and letting them know how to vote and make their voice heard. So that's pretty great. Thanks for participating in the poll. In a few minutes, I'm going to have the pleasure of talking live, and you're going to hear from amazing people, the nominees. But first, I want to give this over to Damon Schoholm and Kate Semino to introduce the Citizens League and just give you a little background about this event. Kate and Damon.
Thank you, Jana. Hi, I'm Kate Semino, Executive Director of the Citizens League, and we are so happy to be here with you all today.
Good morning. My name is Damon Schoholm, and I'm a board member with the Citizens League and also the director of the James P. Shannon Leadership Institute at the Amherst H. Wilder Foundation.
Damon and I just want to share a little bit with you about the Citizens League today, and particularly about this event and kind of how we got here with this event. The Citizens League, you may know, is a nonprofit organization. We're based in St. Paul, but we work statewide. And we believe in the power of all people to learn about and shape public policy that works for Minnesota and for Minnesotans. We are nonpartisan, or as we sometimes like to say, multi-partisan, meaning that we bring together people of different political perspectives, and that's a core part of what we do. One of our goals at the League is to empower people like you, like each of us, to be civic leaders in our community. And that doesn't mean just having a special title or a special role. It means giving of yourself and your energy, your brilliance in a way that benefits others and helps make your community stronger. You may have seen the story on our website. Our public policy director at the League, Amanda Kunchbahari, shared about her mother taking action and getting involved in her community to relocate a bus stop in a place that was safer for her family and for others in the community. That is civic leadership. Those local actions multiplied by thousands, millions, that makes an impact. So we all know 2020 has been quite a year, and it just keeps getting more challenging. Way back in April and May, the Citizens League staff started talking about what it might look like if we shared some of these real and inspiring stories that we were all seeing and hearing. So the idea for this event, kind of the seed was planted way back in April and May, and that's the concept that became this event today. And the idea was to remind us all that we each have a role to play in helping our communities build and thrive. So this event, honestly, is new for us. It's a new event for the Citizens League, and it's a new event for Minnesota in a year of many firsts. So, again, Damon and I are here. Damon is somebody I really value as a member of the Citizens League board, a member of our community, a thought partner, just a great civic leader himself. Damon, so over a decade at the Wilder Foundation and in your community work, you've worked with leadership programs with different communities and different types of people and you focused on supporting these people in seeking to have a real impact on their communities and defining what that really looks like. So you've really worked with hundreds of people who have that moment where they say, I see a need or I see something that could be better and I want to take steps to make that happen. Is there a common thread? What do you see? What motivates people?
I think there are several common threads, Kate. Mostly you see people that see a need, identify how it is they can offer something to it and just step into it. For some people that might be related to a talent or a skill or a gift that they have to offer. For others, it might be related to an identity that or an experience that they share with that particular issue for their community. For some, it's simply about not having access to contribute in another way through our institutions or systems, and they can do so on their most local community level, so they do that. For all of them, I think there are two things that I see are the common threads for these folks. One is the energy and the will to contribute. They recognize that contribution isn't just about them giving, but them receiving as well, because of course, as we all know, Paul Wellstone's quote, we all do better when we all do better. I think people recognize that they're giving something because it's important for them to receive something back in the form of a stronger community. And then the other thing that I think is a really common thread amongst all of these folks that we'll hear from today and so many of our great community leaders is that they don't believe that they're doing something necessarily extraordinary. Yeah. They're not seeking to be highlighted for what they do, other than maybe bringing a light to their cause. They just believe that they should contribute in some way. And so they go about the business of doing that without fanfare most of the time, without high profile recognition, and certainly not necessarily as positional leaders, but as people that just care about their community. And I think that the people that we're highlighting today and the work that they do, while they are not specifically Citizens League projects, we felt it was really important to share their stories because of the passion that they bring and how inspiring that can be for all of us. They weren't chosen because of their specific work or the actual cause that they're supporting, but because of the actions that they take as individuals to contribute to our community. We call them civic leaders. I sometimes refer to them as change makers. Their stories give us hope about our future and show us a path forward for how we can contribute to making that future a little brighter.
Thanks, Damon. As always, well said. I appreciate you and your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Part of civic leadership, like Damon said, is lifting others up and creating more opportunities for more people. You all know it is Give to the Max Day in Minnesota. This is Minnesota's Giving Day, where everyone steps forward and supports the nonprofits, the causes that are working so hard in our communities. So I hope that as you learn about some of our projects, the nominees today, and the causes they champion, things that you'll learn about them, consider supporting their work. We're going to hear some specific stories today with our guests, but if you visit our website, you can see all the nominees. You can roll over all their photos, their smiling faces, and learn about their projects. So please do that later today as you're looking for some good causes to support on Give to the Max Day and help us lift others up as well. You can visit citizensleague.org/MN Civic Leader. I'd also like to take a moment to just thank our sponsors of this event that have made it possible for the Citizens League to lift up others and highlight these amazing leaders. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Special thanks to Comcast for your generous commitment to the Citizens League, as well as Securian, Mojo Solo, and I also want to, of course, thank our host, Jana Shortal. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Jana, who's going to introduce some of our nominees and just begin to explore and talk about just a few of the stories and experiences that have emerged over this wild year of the COVID-19 pandemic and so many other challenges and opportunities that have emerged. So I'm really pleased to turn it back over to Jana.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate it. And I'm really happy to be with you today. To start with just a little bit of levity in a dark time. Speaking of dark, I know that the room I'm in is very dark. I had a light that was supposed to make it brighter, but it exploded about 45 minutes ago. So I take that as like a big sign to have a great day. So I don't know about you, but let's move forward. We want to highlight the examples of what real people have been doing during this pandemic and in a year where we've had so much pain. With so many amazing nominees, it was pretty hard to narrow it down to the ones we're about to introduce you to, but eventually we got to that and I'm eager to talk with them and I know you want to get to that part, so I'll keep going. Today, joining us are Bukata Hayes, Cathy Spann, and Jen Rosenbaum. Welcome to all of them and a heartfelt congratulations from me on getting this recognition, so well deserved. And more important than the recognition, I know for all of you, is the fact that you're doing the work and you don't necessarily need to be recognized for it, but a pat on the back isn't a bad thing. And so I also want to thank you for the work that you do. It's not just about your award. What you are doing is making our community better. We were also hoping to have our fourth civic leader who was recognized, Adrienne Benjamin, with us today. But on Tuesday night, her daughter was admitted to the hospital with COVID symptoms. And she asked us to share that with you today to remind all of us how serious and real this illness is. So if you can all just take a minute and think of Adrienne and her family and wish them the best. And we will transition to talking about Adrienne's work first then. And we are going to do that with Joan Vorderbruggen. I hope I said that right, Joan, who nominated Adrienne. Who better than to talk about the work that she does? Adrienne is an artist and an educator. She creates crafts that are inspired and embedded in Ojibwe culture, but with a little bit of flair to them, contemporary flair, and particularly something called the jingle dress, which I'm excited about. She also leads a youth and adult program. And so, Joan, you nominated Adrienne, you're close with Adrienne. Tell us a little bit about the work that she does.
Adrienne is just an incredible artist and creator and maker. She's an advocate, an educator. She's all about community. She just has a wide network of people that she cares about and that she works with. And she is really a multiplier. She sees talent in the community and she leverages it for the best good of everyone. So she oftentimes will connect really amazing artists with youth-based initiatives that benefit, the young people within her community and her tribe, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. And she also just, she's creative in everything she touches. So when at the onset of COVID, she began making hundreds upon hundreds of masks because she's an amazing dressmaker and an amazing sewist. And she started distributing them to communities that needed them most. But she also, couldn't help herself being the incredible artist that she is. And she started making these really beautiful embellished masks with all of this artistry. And she went on to win first place in the first annual Maskies Awards as judge's choice. So she, in doing all of this really beautiful charitable work and utilizing her talents to the best of her ability, she just really, she really provides a lot of beauty to everything she touches.
What a beautiful and incredible story. Thank you, Joan, for sharing more about Adrienne's work, for jumping on this Zoom call last minute. I think that, all we can do right now is to celebrate Adrienne. The best way we can is to lift her and her family up right now as they fight COVID themselves.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joan. Next, we're going to welcome Bukata Hayes. Bukata, you live and work in Mankato, Minnesota, where you lead a group focused on bridging differences and honoring the diversity of folks living in that area. And your nominator said that you are incredible at fostering relationships on even the most challenging issues. Example, in 2016, you established a community journaling initiative called Write on Race. Write as in journaling, I like the pun there, to help people explore the issue of race in their lives. So that's 2016. How does that pivot in 2020, especially in Minnesota with the pandemic and then the killing of George Floyd?
Yeah. So I think thank you, Jana. Awesome to be here with everybody else. I think that really kind of put a paved path in a way for us to respond as a community, to come together, to be visible, to be vocal after the murder of George Floyd, to push our community to be better here in Mankato and surrounding areas. I think also through that effort right on race and laying out the many ways in which race impacts us as individuals, but also our communities, it provided folks confidence and courage to step up, to be there. And I think ultimately in this time, we want folks to be there, right? We want to be there actively doing that work. And so as the executive director of the Greater Mankato Diversity Council, I get the opportunity to connect with folks, build some bridges, create active relationships.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that work. You also did some work to kind of bridge that gap, bring people together with their concerns in your area about violence and policing and racial justice and where those all come together.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with, and I think most folks will say this, we don't do this work alone. We do this work in partnership and collaboration with many folks. And so in doing that work, partner with a lot of folks to be able to convene some conversations on policing, both in our region and then also here really locally in the Mankato area. And so again, just we got to work towards solution. We got to work towards bettering our community. That means tackling those really tough issues.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Bukat. I look forward to the larger conversation we're going to have later. Next, we turn to Jen Rosenbaum. Welcome to Jen. Tell you a little bit about her. She spent the fall mobilizing friends and families around the country to get active in the election that just passed us by. This was in addition to your actual day job. And this was a grassroots effort, right, Jen, focused on actions. And this is something that's so important. It was focused on actions that individual people could take. It was something they could bite off, right? So how did you do that?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I started Let's Do Something about a little over a year ago to kind of do exactly that. So my friends, my family, and I would talk a lot about politics, but we rarely did anything about politics. So I thought, okay, what if we spent a small portion of the time we spent talking about it actually taking action? So the way I did it was by recruiting people who I knew cared about politics in my network to start small teams of their own. So think like 2 to 10 people who could meet regularly. So bite size, like you mentioned, 2 hours a month. That was the idea. Could we get together for brunch with friends and family for 2 hours a month? Brunch turned into Zooms, and that was okay. Maybe especially important because of COVID. But so what I did was I helped make it really easy for team captains to help their teams take action. So I provided specific ideas for what teams could do every month to have an impact. And it was great. We ended up sending tens of thousands of letters, texts, calls to voters, and hopefully had a big impact.
Wow.
And some fun.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Jen, for that work, and look forward to the conversation. Our final featured nominee today is Cathy Spann. Cathy, your nominator referred to you as a servant leader, working to assure that North Minneapolis families' voices are heard, bringing community voices, public safety leaders, and local officials together to create real solutions and community solutions to the North Side. Can you talk a little bit about some of the responses that you organized this summer during the pandemic and after what happened to George Floyd? What'd you do?
I want to first thank you, Jana, for being the presenter here, and thank the Citizens League and Kate and their board of directors and staff. And I also want to thank the person that nominated me. I'm really humbled by the fact that someone would recognize the work that I do, but I do it it's not about me. It is really, I stand on the shoulders of many people. And some of the things that we did, we are in a pandemic, a COVID pandemic, but we also was faced with the 2020 census. We did 5 census events. We also did, in partnership with an organization Off the Blue Couch, we did healing stories for people to come together and journal about what they were experiencing at the moment in real time. We started the Jordan Neighbor to Neighbor Crisis Response Team, that if you needed something, call us and we would be there. We also started doing a bereavement fund, because we were faced with violence that was unbelievable. And then I personally started doing what I call collective power lunches, inviting people to have lunch with me and just meet each other, connect with each other. And then another vision came forth from a Jordan resident, and we participated in 30 days of prayer, the Healing the Heart of Our City, an event that was collaborated among African-American leadership and faith-based communities. 30 days of prayer of all faiths. Come and pray, because we were experiencing severe trauma. And it's just, it was just amazing. Collective power is what I stand on the shoulders of people that believe in that.
My goodness, Cathy, we so appreciate you. I appreciate just being in a world that you're in. It's pretty great. I remember that 30 days of prayer. I remember reading about it and thinking, what a powerful and beautiful idea. And that it was welcome to anybody of any race or creed that needed a space. So I appreciate that.
Yes.
All right. Well, we are going to dive into this a little bit more where we start the questions that many of you might have for our panel. I hope I get to the right kinds of things. And as we all know, Zoom is, man, it's been great having this, but it's also a little bit different than talking in person. So what I'll try to do is not step on you like I pretty much just stepped on Cathy on the cyber world. So I apologize, Cathy, Miss Cathy, I'm so sorry. I know that none of you, Cathy, you talked about it, Bukata, you talked about it, Jen, you talked about it. And we talked about it with Adrienne. None of you believes that you alone can change your community or fix a giant problem. You've got to have people that you listen to and work with, right? And so actually I'll just start in order so we make sure we get this. I'll start with Cathy, I'll go backwards. So Cathy, talk a little bit about that. Talk about allies, maybe that surprised you, people that joined you in your community work that you didn't see coming, and why it's important to accept anybody that wants perhaps the conversation to help.
You know, I work in a community that is under siege with gun violence, a community that faces some of the greatest disparities in the Twin Cities, the Jordan neighborhood. What has surprised me most are the voices of those individuals that would normally not stand up. Those residents have had the courage. They do what I call your voice is your choice. They have made a difference by sharing their stories, using social media. They have taken a stand, and what they have done is that they're no longer afraid. They're no longer afraid to address the issues that are important to them in their lives. And I think that for me, I partner with so many other social service organizations, faith-based communities, but for actual residents that live on blocks in Jordan, for them to sit at their computers and write a letter to the mayor, to write a letter to the chief of police, to tell someone to not live in isolation, but to say, I need help. I need this issue to be addressed. That has, I think, impacted me the most. And it has really made a difference in my life, that COVID changed and transformed people, that they no longer will stand, that their voice is really their choice. And they have said, no more, no more. When I need help, I'm going to ask for help. And that, I think, has surprised me the most. And I am most appreciative of that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Cathy. Bukata, have you had folks join you in the last year that you didn't anticipate? And tell me a little bit about why that's important.
Yeah. So I would say that I think it's about in this moment that I think we couldn't sit on the fence, right? Yes. I think in this moment it required us to kind of state where our convictions were and then have our action follow. And so for me, it was, I'm in a predominantly white community. And so to see the many white Mancadawans show up and say, like, I'm not going to sit on the sideline anymore. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I'm going to choose the side to where all of us and our humanity and our dignity is honored and uplifted. And I'm going to do that work. I'm going to do that work with me. I'm going to do that work within my community. I'm not going to have the burden of rectifying these solely rest on Black and brown folks within my community. So for me, it was the many folks who stepped up in this moment, right?
Yeah.
Who said, I will be part of the coalition moving forward. And that included folks like our police chief here, who has been intimately involved in these conversations around police reform, who wants to be a part of that. Many of our other sort of community leaders as well in our elected positions and businesses who have said that they will show up too, and they will be. For me, that's been reassuring and actually confirming that I think we're on the right path. Like the trajectory, right? That arc that we're on is the direction we're supposed to be going.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jen, I know you started with that idea, but you talked about how many people had to get involved. What did you see?
Well, I really had no idea what to expect, but what was surprising to me, I guess, the most was how many people said, this is great. You know, I've had a lot of passion. I didn't know what to do with it. So thank you for giving me this little bit of direction to make something happen. And that was really important because it showed me that there's so many people who really, there's not a lot of apathy. There's a lot of people who really care, but they might just need a little help.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll start with you then in this next round. You know, obviously you're being honored for the work that you did or started, but when you think of the things that you're doing, do you think of what you're doing as leadership, civic leadership, or do you think of yourself as basically like the idea and then the place where people can plug in and recharge to get back out there?
Yeah, I definitely would not have put the word leadership on it, though. I suppose it is, but really how I think about it is empowering others to be leaders with their small communities. So giving people just enough to demonstrate leadership themselves.
Bukata, what do you say?
Yeah, I'll reiterate, you only do this in partnership and coalition. I learned that from my dad way back. I learned it, I see it being practiced in this community and in communities across our state and our country. I'm just doing my part, playing my role. Whatever I bring to the table, I bring that to the table, and then I let others do the work that I can't. I often say, like, there's no ego in this work, right? Like you have to be egoless because it means you have to partner with folks to make things happen, and you can't do it alone. So there's many folks, and I wouldn't consider myself a leader. I would consider myself someone who is willing to show up.
Thank you for bringing that up. I was told this year, shortly after George was killed, Mr. Floyd, and then obviously during the pandemic and doing what I do, I'll be honest, it was from my therapist, who said, focus on your role. If you get too big, then you will feel powerless and uninspired to get out into the world and use your voice. Like you said, Cathy, can you talk a little bit about finding your role, using your role, and what that means to you? Because you seem to really have a handle on it.
You know, I'm gonna be really honest. I'm a woman in this Black skin trying to figure out what is my purpose. I am called to action. I am called to justice. And Bukata and Jenna, right? We don't do it alone. But I have an expectation of Cathy. I have an expectation of myself that I model the change that I want to see. I model the change. I model the justice. I model the leadership. I model kindness. I model caring. I model love. I model that. Because if I don't model that, how can I expect someone else to do that? How can I say to you, love me, if I don't love myself or love others? So I am the change I want to see. And that's the expectation I have of Cathy. And you know what? I'm living, people say living your best life off that song, that rap song. And I am actually living my most authentic self. It took me years to get here in this place. And that's why I stand on the shoulders of my board of directors, my community, my pastors, my bishops on the north side, because I am the change I want to see. It begins with me. And that's the beauty of the work that we do. It's not even about us. And I love that, is that I am just here for a moment. And COVID taught me that I am here for a brief moment. And if I don't use this time wisely, it could be taken away from me. I am on purpose and on point. I'm intentional about the work that I do. And I don't do it alone. I don't.
Cathy. Woo! All right, Cathy, then I'll challenge you with this, and thank you for your just amazing transparency. I think that's so important right now.
Yeah.
But there's gotta been one day, 1 hour where you felt like, man, I can't. This is too hard. It's too big. What kept you going when you hit that?
On June 23rd of this year, I hosted a crime and safety emergency meeting with the Minneapolis Police Department in my community. After that meeting was over, I passed out and was rushed to the hospital. I was diagnosed with lung infection and pneumonia. That was the hardest point for me.
Mhm.
But you know what? I'm a fighter, because my community, before I hit that ground, there were about 15 people still left at the meeting, maybe more. They grabbed me, they held me, they called the ambulance, and they even came to the hospital to see if I was okay. 7 days later, on June 30th, I was back at it. I held another community emergency meeting to address gun violence. But you know what, the community, because we care about each other, we truly do. They said, Cathy, make announcements that you have to make, and then you sit down, because we want you to be healthy and safe and focus on and get well. That became the hardest point for me, is that the unknown. But what I saw in my community is that if I had left that day, if I had exit this world that day, community members were there to carry the torch and say, we gonna fight for justice, and we gonna fight for gun violence, and we gonna fight for public safety, we gonna fight for transformation. They were there, and I witnessed it, and they were there to take care of each other, including me. And that was the tipping point for me to know, truly know, that I don't do this work alone, that I have many people that are around me, that love me, support me, and I don't do it alone. I stand on their shoulders. I stand on their shoulders.
Thank you, Cathy. I'm glad you're well.
Mm-hmm.
Bukata, there had to have been a moment where you thought, I gotta pass the baton. This is too much. Was that moment this year? And what did you do? What did you decide?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of those moments, and it's been two. So one was, and I share this story a lot, as a small nonprofit, we were we were unable to make payroll, and I remember having to look in folks' eyes who were depending on me, right, to do that work and make sure that they could take care of their families. We couldn't do that, and I remember how like devastating and hurt I was about that.
Mm-hmm.
To Cathy's point, like, they still showed up the next day. They said, we got work to do. It's for a much bigger purpose. And then the most recent one, of course, I think for me was having to watch the 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And I think realizing how far away we were from like actually loving each other, to Cathy's point, to like having a stake in one another and for our community and for and for humankind. And so for me, that day, the next few days were really, really tough for me. But we still have to show up. And I think ultimately, I knew that there were some folks who in my community needed to see me still fighting, needed to see me still engaged and showing up. And so I think ultimately that's how you work through that. But yes, I have had the moments where it's like, you know what, I think I'm done. And and I'm out of here.
Yes.
But I think you have community around you who pick you up and remind
Yeah.
you that they value you in community in this space.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, Bukata. Jen, I was curious with yours. I mean, I know how it felt as a journalist the last year as we rushed towards this presidential election and the vitriol that surrounded it and the partisan politics and the danger, even if you were involved in get out the vote campaigns, that would bring to you. Were there ever points for you that just like, this is too ugly, I have a family, I don't want to do this anymore?
Right.
I probably should have felt that way more, but not really. I just really very deeply believe in the work because I know that if we all do something, we can make a difference. So, I mean, that really never left me, and it still hasn't. And, you know, there's definitely been successes and failures. I've tried initiatives that I thought would be really exciting that didn't work at all, and tried things that worked great. And, you know, you just kind of move on and keep going and try to be nimble and evolve quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. Well, before we get to our very last question, and I'm going to get some tissues, I'm sure, because I'm going to give it back to Kate for a minute, and then I'm going to ask you one more question. Kate?
I'm coming. I'm here. Okay. Well, this is incredible. Thank you all so much for this work. I'm about to clear the calendar and just hang out with you all the rest of the day. This is the moment where we really need these stories and these examples and this encouragement to all be connected to our community, to all be beyond ourselves and give to others. So thank you. I want to take a moment to remind everyone it is Give to the Max Day. This is Minnesota's Giving Day, where we, as the people of Minnesota, we raise millions of dollars to support nonprofits, to support the organizations doing such important work in our community. They all make our communities stronger. So I invite you to view the Minnesota Civic Leader nominations on the Citizens League's website, and please consider supporting one of these projects or any of the others that you see on our site, or any causes or work in your community that matter to you. These are organizations that really do depend on us to help them thrive and to help our communities thrive. So again, our website is citizensleague.org/MN Civic Leader. You can find all these nominees and all the others as well. And while you're at it, please consider supporting the Citizens League. We are a multi-partisan, statewide organization. We're working to, and we have been for almost 70 years, encouraging people to find and use their voice in community to make an impact, to understand that public policy is all of us. We all are there. We're going to work together to make public policy that works for all. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back to Jana for just this final question. This is a good one. And then we're going to roll through a slide deck of all the nominees for today's award. And you can take a look, enjoy your coffee, and take a look at all the nominees today. Thank you again.
All right, Jen, Bukata, and Cathy. We have one last question. It's a big question, but I think all of you, judging by your big answers, are ready for something like this. 2020 has torn us apart, as far away from being a US as we possibly can be. Bukata, Cathy, you talk about race and policing changes that have to happen, and those are difficult conversations that are happening on the north side, in Mankato, everywhere. And every day, if you go on social media, they can tear and tear. And Jen, those don't not touch politics. So when you come into a situation in your work, tell me this, what would you ask of people in your community who might hold different views or perspectives? What would you ask of them to come to the table? Cathy, we'll start with you.
I would ask them to be the change that they want to see. I would ask them to, if you really believe in equity and inclusion, that you have acceptance of others. I would ask them to forgive. I would ask them to do not wait for someone, because that someone is you. Do not wait, because that someone is you right now at this moment. There is no other time. And that's what I would ask, that you accept, that you forgive, and that you are the change that you want to see, and that you no longer wait for someone, that you are the one. You are. And stand up and make a difference. That's what I would ask.
Jen, I saw you nodding several times. What do you
Oh, I
think?
just love Cathy so much. You're so wonderful. But yeah, no, I mean, I would say the same thing. So, I mean, I guess my spin on that would be, you know, if you're feeling stressed or anxious, or, you know, even if you're not, you're just feeling like you care, you know, what do you care about? Say it out loud right now, today, and then just make a commitment. Spend a little bit of time doing something about it. And, you know, Google's great for that. There's plenty of options out there. And bring someone with you. It's much more fun virtually, of course, to take action with others. It builds community and it helps kind of break down barriers.
Bukata, you'll close us out. What are you thinking? What's on your heart?
Yeah, you know, I typically ask folks to begin with their own experience. And so if we're talking about race and policing, the question is, like, how many times has it impacted you? Right. So as we come to the table, let's not talk about like how you perceive and what's your opinion, but say, like, how many times have you been pulled over? How many times have you been pulled out of your car? How many times, like, let's begin there so at least we can talk about where those experiences differ. We don't have to agree on why they differ and all, but we can agree that they differ. And I think that is such a key when trying to build bridges and connect folks, is simply to say where our experience is different, right? Like if it's around faith or race, or like, there are some differences that we can admit. And in admitting that, I believe it opens up the space to then begin to talk about the many, many reasons why. I think for me, it's always you begin with your experience. For me, I ask folks, how do they experience race in Mankato? How do they experience policing in Mankato? How do they experience inclusion in Mankato? And we talk from there, right? And we keep it at sometimes hyper local, right? Because it is about being hyper local in this work.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's what I would invite folks to do, not to come with sort of these national narratives,
Right.
or opinions or assertions or conjecture, but let's sit down and talk about how you experience it. And then we will discover and uncover these ways in which we experience it differently. And then we talk about why we might be experiencing it differently. And I think that opens up the space for both those who are for or maybe against the.
That's beautiful. Keep it local. And most importantly, keep it listening and local. If you're living in the same space, the same neighborhood, like Cathy, you're on the north side, can we all come to this agreeable point that we're in pain? We all live here, we all see things. And then the conversation goes from there. Conversation can be painful. Conversation can be challenging, but it starts a conversation. Well, I want to thank all of you for this conversation this morning. And again, my utmost thanks for the work you do first and foremost, and a congratulations and a hearty pat on the back that you should each give yourselves today. It does matter to be recognized. And I hope it doesn't just matter, but it reminds you of the incredible paths that you are laying down so that those that come behind you have a good sturdy set of shoulders to stand on. So as we close out today, please stick around. We'll share all the nominees so you can see all of the great work being done in our communities here in Minnesota. I promise you, as you read through them, this is pretty great medicine. You'll be inspired to see what people are doing, even in 2020. And then a call to action. If you weren't inspired by Jen and Bukata and Cathy, oh man, have another cup of coffee and rewatch this when the recording is done. And then go figure out who you're going to be today. Go do the good you can do today. No, you don't have to move mountains. You start by listening and engaging in community. That's what I learned today from Bukata and Cathy and Jen. And I hope you did a little bit as well. So I'm grateful for all of you. Congratulations to every nominee, to our winners, everyone at the Citizens League. I hope you have an outstanding Give to the Max today. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.